We are looking at our free response 1 assignment, and the first question on this video, we have a U.S. economy that's in a severe recession with no inflation. We need to draw an aggregate demand, aggregate supply graph that shows the full employment output, the current output level, and the current price level. So keep in mind, don't be confused by this terminology. This is the same thing as when we did our homework for chapter 12 in the book, Aggregate Demand, Aggregate Supply. The book called this potential GDP output. So when we go to back to our homework, this curve right here is what the book called potential GDP. The AP exam is going to call that full employment output, and they're going to call this curve the long run aggregate supply curve. And this curve right here, this upward sloping aggregate supply, the AP exam is going to call the short run aggregate supply. So your graph for question 1 should look like this. You should have your price level on the vertical axis, your real GDP or Y outputs on the horizontal axis. You should show your long run aggregate supply curve as a vertical curve. It's going to be it's going to not change with price at all. You should show your Y or your full output or your potential output right here. So this is what the question is calling full employment output, YF. You should show an upward sloping short run aggregate supply curve and a downward sloping aggregate demand. Now this is the curve you want to show for part A, because it's asking you to show what the U.S. economy would look like in a severe recession. So now in part B, we're told that the government is going to cut spending. That's going to shift your aggregate demand to the left, and we jump back over to our graph so you could show for part B that leftward shift with and you can label the first of the original aggregate demand 81, and then after the shift label this a second aggregate demand 82. It's a good idea to draw this arrow showing the shift, and then show both the output and the price level decreasing. So this is going to be Y2 and P2 for that second level of output and level of prices after the cut in government spending. Okay? So that's part B. Now part C, we want to explain the mechanism by which the cut or the decrease in government spending will affect the unemployment rate. Well, you simply need to say in words that when we cut spending and we shift our aggregate demand to the left, and we lower our output from, or real GDP from Y1 here to Y2 here, that's going to mean that businesses are going to lay off workers because they're going to be producing less goods and services. So it's going to cause, so this shift in this lower output from Y1 to Y2 is going to cause the unemployment rate to rise, and the overall employment numbers, the number of employed, to drop. Okay. Now let's look real quick. Part D. Okay, so now the Federal Reserve Bank is going to purchase bonds on the open market, and we want to draw a graph showing what effect this will have on the interest rate. So this is going to be expansionary, a monetary policy. It's going to put money into the supply, and we want to also show how this change in the interest rate will change or affect the output and the price level, or we want to explain this, because you're not going to be able to show this on the graph for the money supply. So let's just take this one step at a time. So part one, we want to show the graph, or draw the graph. It's going to look like this. You're going to have the interest rate on the vertical axis, the quantity of money on the horizontal axis. You're going to show a shift in a vertical money supply curve to the right, and you're going to have your downward sloping money demand curve here, and you're going to show with this rightward shift or increase in the money supply, you'll show that the interest rate is going to go down. Now, what effect will this have on overall output and price level? Well, when you drop the interest rate, what that's going to do, and you just need to explain this in words, that's going to mean that because money costs less, because the interest rates are lower right here, that's going to mean that people are going to be more likely to invest or borrow money, because it's cheaper to borrow money, and they're going to be more likely to consume, because if they buy anything at all, where they borrow money, like if they buy a car or a house, it's going to be less expensive because the interest rates are lower. That's going to shift the aggregate demand curve to the right on this graph over here, and you just need to explain this. Okay, you don't have to draw any more graphs. Just explain that the aggregate. Let me just go over here. The aggregate demand is going to shift back to the right, which is going to raise output and raise price levels. Okay, that's part D. Now we need to go finish up here and look at what's going to happen to the international value of the dollar. Well, if the interest rates go down, that means that foreigners are going to be less likely to want to buy bonds or invest the capital into our economy, because they're going to get less of a return on their money, on their investment. So that's going to mean there's going to be less of a capital inflow and more of a capital outflow. So when our dollars are going to be less in demand, that's going to mean that the value of the dollar is going to decrease, or our currency is going to depreciate, which is going to cause more of a capital outflow, which is going to mean our exports are going to rise and our imports are going to fall. Any time the value of the domestic currency goes down, that means that the dollars are cheaper, so our goods are cheaper, so we're going to sell more and buy less. Exports go up and imports go down. And I believe that answers, these questions. So, relative to the rest of the world, when our dollar gets less expensive, relative, or you can also say devalues or depreciates relative to foreign currencies, we're going to export more because our dollars are easier to buy, which means our goods are easier or cheaper to buy, and we'll import less. Because our dollars can now buy less because they're of less value. Okay, that takes care of question 1. When we come back on the next video, we will look at question number 2.